Good morning, everyone. I'm Johnny Yakovitz, Senior Director of Philanthropic Impact at the Jewish Community Foundation of Greater Washington. And I'm delighted to welcome you to today's conversation on behalf of the Foundation's Fund for Women and Girls. Thank you all for being here. Over the last few years, so many conversations about Israel have understandably focused on security, humanitarian response, and political uncertainty. And those issues are critically important, but alongside those headlines, there are equally important questions about how policy is evolving, how democracy responds during moments of crisis, and what all of this means for women and girls. History reminds us that these moments have the potential to reshape institutions, public priorities, and policy for years to come. So today's conversation is an opportunity to hear directly from leaders who are shaping those conversations every day, not just reacting to events, but influencing the policies and systems that will define Israel's future. We'll spend about 25 minutes in conversation before opening it up to audience questions. So please submit your questions through the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen throughout the program. With that, I'm thrilled to introduce our guests. First, we have Ella Alon. Ella serves as the co-executive director of Itach Maaki, an organization advancing social justice through feminist legal advocacy and grassroots organizing. Itach Maaki works alongside women from diverse communities across Israel to transform systems and expand access to rights, representation, and opportunity. We also have Hanan Alsana, who's the co-executive director of Itach Maaki and a longtime advocate for Bedouin Arab women and marginalized communities. Her work bridges community leadership, policy advocacy, and feminist organizing, bringing voices that are too often excluded in national conversations. And we have Tal Hochman. She is the executive director of the Israel Women's Network, Israel's leading independent organization advancing gender equality through policy advocacy, research, litigation, and public accountability across government and civil society. Thank you all for joining us. I'd love to begin by asking each of you to briefly ground us. When you think about your work today, what feels most urgent that wasn't true just a few years ago? And Ella, I'll start with you.
So it's so good to be here and speak to you. Since October 7, security has become the lens for which almost every policy decision is made. But what we see is that security is often defined very narrowly. Women experience security much more broadly. It is not only protection from rockets or terrorism, it is also being safe from domestic violence, from organized crime in our streets, having access to mental health services, economic stability, food security, safe and secure housing, and knowing that your children have a future. The tragedy is that women are among those most affected by the crisis, yet they are still largely absent from the decision-making tables where these policies are shaped. When security becomes the only political issue, women are often pushed out of leadership instead of being recognized as essential to building a safer society.
Hanan, how about for you? What feels most urgent?
Thank you so much for having us here and for this discussion. As Ella said, that we think the biggest change is that today everyone talks about security, about trauma, about our future, about recognition. So it's not we are not talking about security, soldiers and weapons and tanks. We are talking about the social security for women that women brings, that women needs. And we feel that it is the first time that Israel faced three major crises: social crisis, political and democratic crisis, and diplomatic crisis, and international crisis. And with all these crises, unfortunately, the women in the last 3 years, we only have to respond with this crisis, and we are not in this room which they are taking decision makers to rebuild and recovery. the state and to overcome this, solve this crisis.
Yeah. Yeah. Tal, that feels very connected to some perspectives I think you hold. What feels most urgent to you?
Exactly. So first of all, good morning, and thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here. I'll start by saying that this war that feels like has been forever just brings up very basic questions for our society in Israel. I'm sure you've heard of the enlistment situation and advocacy efforts to enlist the Haredim, but this is just one example. So this brought up so many questions that we have to solve somehow, and gender lens has to be part of it. For example, how the new cities in the north or in the south will be built. So it has to have a gender lens as another additional lens that will be part of the decision-making process around rebuilding Israel. So it's not only about what will happen in Israel in these few years, it's in the long term, how Israel will look like in 50 years from now. And I just want to, you know what, maybe I'll save that for the other question, but I just wanted to add that Israel and we, all three of us, are dealing with a very dramatic anti-feminist backlash here in Israel. And it is a very imminent part of our work, of what we do, how the Knesset looks, and I'll expand about that next.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad you kind of went there, because one of the things that I think about when I look at a crisis is it's not just exposing gaps in the system, but it also allows priorities to reshape, sometimes for good and sometimes not for good. And so these issues that maybe struggled to gain attention suddenly become impossible to ignore. And I see some ways in all of your work that has become really true after October 7th. But then other times the crises almost like provide a cover for these longstanding inequities to become more entrenched, because you can divert attention to the crisis and kind of get people to look the other way. So I'm curious, from where each of you sits, what has changed most dramatically for women in Israel since October 7th? And Hanan, I'd like to start with you.
Thank you. The most thing, it's like we feel, and from our work with the women, because in our organization we are work with Arab and Jewish women. And from their voices, we hear that what I feel also, that our needs and our voice are not heard from these governments. They are, as Tal mentioned, they are not only anti-feminist, they are refuse to listen to the women needs and to hear our voice and the real voice of the women in the field, that they are deal with the consequence, and that's with a very difficult situation. This is the most difficult, because all the time they want to say that we are in a war, and it is not time to talk about women rights, women needs. They are ignore that we are 50% of the society, and with our knowledge and our help, we will not survive.
Yeah. Paul, how about for you?
I think that this is the anti-feminist backlash. I feel like in the past few years, the public has woken up about the need of equal representation. This is something we all have been advocating for years. IWN has submitted an appeal to the High Supreme Court of Justice about that at the beginning of this government, so prior to October 7. And we saw how in these 4-ish years, the public has been raising questions about that in media panels and everywhere, in the Knesset as well, asking where are the women. But the anti-feminist backlash is something that we see how the Knesset is just, the MKs themselves are part of these groups and are promoting anti-feminist policies. Just a few weeks ago, a week ago, another bill was passed, gender segregation in academia. And this is something we all fought very hard against, and hopefully after the election in the next government, we will be able to change that, to overturn that.
So sticking there for a second, it's interesting. I remember, so I visited Israel last May and got a chance to spend some time with Tal. And I remember at one point you showing me a picture of, I believe it was the war cabinet, and there was one woman in the photo, and you said she's the secretary, basically. She was taking the notes. She had no decision making power in that room. And that really stuck with me. And I know Israel Women's Network spends a great deal of time looking at these systems, how decisions get made, who's at the table, how budgets reflect priorities. And so with that, I'm curious, when you're looking at the policy environment today, where do you see the greatest disconnect between what women are experiencing and what the government is prioritizing?
So we see it everywhere. We see it in policies that are supposed to be focused on gender. For example, childbirth allowances or maternity leave, everything related to women's rights. But we also see it in policies that are supposed to be gender neutral. And what we advocate for, we say there are no gender neutral policies because, for example, there was many policies around unpaid leave during the Iran attack in Israel because people were excused from work and had around 2 weeks that they didn't receive pay for because they didn't come to work. And the Treasury Department and the government as a whole said it's not, there is no gender lens for this. There are women, there are men who go to work, and that's it. And we advocated saying this is untrue because when there is a family and someone has to stay with the kids, and you can't divide the days because it has to be one person taking care of the kids for the entire time. Obviously, and I say that with regret and with sorrow, but obviously this is the woman who will stay at home. The father usually makes more money because the gender pay gap in Israel is enormous. It's around 32%. So the men will continue to go to work. The women will take care of the children. And this really just shows how women are less as how their bosses perceive them as being a secondary a part as a worker and first as a mother. So we were around the table with Itach, Maaki and other organizations advocating for a gender lens and policies that you wouldn't think of that. So when there are no women in the government advocating for that, we are the only voice to do that. And that made it extremely difficult. But I am happy to say that we have been able to succeed changing a little bit from this bill and making women's rights around that issue better.
With that, going through the process together, did anything surprise you, either in terms of progress you made or setbacks that you faced?
I think I will tell you that after October 7, IWN has established the Alice line. It's called after the late Alice Shalvi, who was our founder and a great feminist icon in Israel. And it's a hotline for women in 4 languages, and we receive dozens of calls every day from women who come to us and ask us questions about their rights, how they can exercise their rights, if something happened to them. So they want to know if it's legal or not. And through these calls, through these women, we were able to understand what the field these women really needed. So we were able to have much more knowledge than the government itself about what women are experiencing today or yesterday in Israel around employment, around everything related to reserve duty, because this is something we've been dealing with. A lot of families and women didn't receive their rights when their husband went on reserve. This is something that is still going on. So we were able to voice their voices around these tables. And I'm really happy to say that bringing women themselves to the Knesset and to the media channels and just sharing their stories with the right tools that we have, the legal tools, the advocacy tools, really made a change. So we were really able to turn the needle and make that legislation change.
Thank you. Ella, I'd like to come to you. One of the things that I really appreciate about Itach Maaki is that your policy work begins with listening. And as you are working with women across really different communities whose realities don't always make headlines, I'm sure you are hearing incredible stories, the good, the bad, the ugly. What are the conversations that you're having on the ground that you wish every policymaker in the Knesset could hear?
We believe that good policy starts by listening to the people who are most affected by it. So our work always starts with listening. Whether we work with Jewish women, Arab women, Bedouin women, women evacuated from Gaza envelope, mothers of soldiers, they all tell us the same thing. Policies are being made without understanding how people actually live. One thing we hear again and again is exhaustion. Women are carrying an enormous emotional burden. Many live with a constant underlying fear, asking themselves every evening, what will happen tonight? Will my family be safe? That is what prolonged insecurity looks like. Women don't separate security from housing, employment, health, or childcare. They experience all of these issues together. I wish every policymaker spent just one day listening before writing policy. They would quickly realize that many of the solutions already exist within those communities. And they simply need to invite women to the table.
Yeah. Is there a story or pattern that has fundamentally changed how you think about your own or Itach Maaki's approach to advocacy in the last few years?
I think that meeting the women living in the unrecognized villages is something that really changes your advocacy, because you see the gap between how women live in other places and there, and they just make you want to bring those voices to decision-making tables, so they will see how people live here, and that it's like it's so terrible, especially during missiles time. They have no shelters, they have no infrastructure. So I think it's something that every policymaker should be aware of, and that people live like this in Israel.
Yeah, I think as I've gotten to know the landscape for women and girls in Israel, that was a blind spot for me. That I was shocked to hear that unrecognized villages were not covered in the Iron Dome, didn't have the same rights and protections and access that a kibbutz or a moshav might have. And it's really, for me, also fundamentally shifted how I've thought about this landscape and what Israel looks like as a whole. So on that note, Hanan, you've spent your career ensuring that Bedouin and Palestinian Arab Israeli communities aren't left out of national conversations. Not an easy job. When we talk about recovery, resilience, rebuilding, these words can mean really different things depending on where someone lives and the resources that they have. And as you hear the conversation, both, the national conversation in Israel, but also as you're kind of traveling in the diaspora and hearing folks outside of Israel talk about recovery, what do you worry gets lost?
First of all, yes, I want to say that we are in a special situation, a special state, a special country. We have different communities, Arab and Jewish, and in every community we have a cup and different communities. For example, with the Arab community, we have the Arab in the center and the north, and we have also the Bedouin and the Druze. And there is gap between in the needs of each community. So the first one, I want to, when talking about recovery, we don't want only to talk about the recovery of the country. We need to talk about the people. It's not only the housing issue, it's not only the employment, it's not only the health. We should also remember that there is every community, they are start from different place, as you mentioned, and we have different needs. I think also that there is, I'm worried that they are in the last 3 years, they are also ignore the main topic that we want to resolve. It is about the diplomatic, the recognitions, the Palestinian-Israeli conflict that affect our future, our security, and the diplomatic agreement in our region. So missing and not talking about this, we are ignoring the reality. We are not giving the solution for the real recovery that we need as a citizen. It's not only a Jewish community, it's the Arab community. As the October 7 effect on us, the Bedouin, we have hostages and victims also. Before we know that we have hostages and victims, we started to help the people from Otif Gaza, and we established the Arab Jewish Emergency Relief Center. The women did it, women leadership. So the next point, it's like, I'm worried that they will also and will not invest in women political leadership, because this is the way that we will solve and we do the recovery. It's to work in partnership, Arab and Jewish together, and women in political leadership.
Yeah. I think one of the messages that I hope, at least, that our community in the diaspora hears is how interconnected everything is. And I think, so there was a story in particular, I believe, of a woman's family where you were defending the house from being demolished, I think, as a highway was being built. And the brother, her brother Osama, I had learned about through a totally different path, because on October 7th, he was in a shelter, a bomb shelter, and at one point had stepped out of the shelter to confront the terrorists and say, no, everyone in here is Arab, please leave them be. And I believe that he was killed on that day. And if you are sitting here and listening as part of our DC community, when the Nova exhibition came to DC, that shelter was one of the exhibits. And so I even have chills talking about this story, because we're all so connected to each other. And there's no, in my mind at least, there's no recovery in Israel without that holistic lens and without understanding the interplay of all of those stories together. I'm going to shift us a little bit, because we often spend a lot of time talking about challenges, and we could go on about them forever. There's many. But I'd love to think a little bit and spend a little bit of time talking about progress that's been made. And so this is open to anybody. What is one policy victory or legal victory, large or small, that gives you confidence that advocacy and the work that you do still matters?
I can start. So I think that but unfortunately, in recent years, many of our victories have been defensive. We have spent much more energy blocking harmful policies than advancing the policies that women and communities need to thrive. One example that gives me hope was our work around the proposed cuts to the government's 5-year development plan for the Arab society. We brought a gender perspective into the discussion and showed how these cuts would disproportionately harm women and families. Together with a broad coalition, we helped reduce the scale of those cuts. It reminded us that advocacy works when it combines evidence from the field, coalition building, legal expertise, and a persistent engagement with policymakers. my hope is that in the coming years we can shift from playing defense to actually shaping a more inclusive and forward-looking agenda.
I'll continue and share about, I talked a little bit about our work around representation. And I feel like public agenda around representation has really shifted in the last 3 years. After we had submitted our appeal to the High Supreme Court of Justice based on the fact that there were almost no women as general executives in government ministries in Israel. There are around 32 government ministries, and there were around 4 women who were in these positions. So ever since then, we had submitted an appeal every time a new man was appointed to a high position in the government, and unfortunately it happened a lot. So it made us work a lot in the past 4 years. But this really, this and with the work with our friends from other organizations, but this really shifted the public asking this with the war and the decisions that were made around the war really brought up questions about, wait, why is the room full of men? Why there are no women? It doesn't make sense that, as Hanan said, 50% of the population is not being represented at all around these tables. So just recently, we're able to block an appointment to a very high position in the government. And this is really a precedent in the High Supreme Court of Justice in Israel. And the conversation around elections is also really was changed around this, about asking who will represent us. There was a party that just had primaries, and they had a one man, one woman in all spaces. So it's men, women, women. And we hope that this will be just the first out of many parties that will talk about how important it is to have women around the table.
What do you think made that success possible, that the blocking of the appointment possible?
So I think that it's kind of funny, but I think that because the situation was so dire, the war and the fact that there were really no women around the table just didn't make any excuses for these people. Because when someone asks, it doesn't make sense, like why there's not even one woman, he can't say, well, if there was a woman with enough qualifications, then, but you can't say that. There are very powerful and smart and capable women in Israel. We know that, we all know that. We see them in media channels, we see them leading companies. So this excuse just didn't hold any water, if you can use this phrase in English as well.
Yeah.
And because this situation was so dire, then it wasn't just us feminist crazy women who said that, it was the entire public. And I think that really what made the change.
So interesting. So as we're approaching this upcoming election cycle in Israel, I'm curious, from each of your positions, are there questions that you hope candidates are focusing on or maybe being held accountable to answer that haven't been as prevalent in previous election cycles?
I'll start by saying that I don't usually believe candidates in this time before elections. I think it's most important to look at their actions, what they did in this Knesset, in the last Knesset, when they were in power and when they were in the opposition. So it's really easy to talk about what you will legislate when you'll be the prime minister, but most of them won't be the prime ministers, but we still want them to advocate for women's rights. And there's so much to do in the next Knesset about women first, as Ella said, to undo all the things that was done to harm women in this Knesset, but also to make progress. There's so much to do in Israel to make progress for women. And I think it's very important. And this is what we at IWN are focusing on in this 3 months, is what these people, these MKs, these party leaders did for us or didn't do. And then hopefully the public will just vote based on that.
And now, Nella, how about for you all?
I have for them two questions. Okay, there is what is their plan for the day after, and if in their plan the women included, not as to give them a service, but to lead. Okay, and also the second question is about our future, about how they are look to our future in the region. Okay, in the what is the mean for security for them, and if they have a plan about what happened, what the NGOs already do in the last 3 years. For example, in Itach, Maaki, we train women to be leaders in the local municipality and for political and to participate in diplomatic negotiation. So how you are going to use to take these things that the NGOs already work on it and bring to be part of the recovery and to rebuild the state. And the third one, how to rebuild the democracy and protect it and bring more women to implement the democracy.
I would ask them, how are you actually going to ensure that everyone living in this country can live with both security and dignity? Because security without basic rights is not sustainable. Economic opportunity without personal safety is not enough. And recovery without inclusion will leave too many communities behind.
Yeah. So many of the folks who are joining us on the call today are donors and community leaders in the United States. And philanthropy often, I think, has a tendency to want to focus on services or immediate direct response because you can see the need, you can see the person who needs immediate relief, whether that's food or healthcare, medical care, but policy work is really different from that. And I think, Ella, as you mentioned, like sometimes a defensive win is a win. Sometimes something not happening is actually the victory. But much of the policy work unfolds really slowly and often behind the scenes. It's not in the news, it's not in the press. Help us understand how, as a donor, as a philanthropist sitting outside of Israel, we can genuinely move the needle, and what types of investments are going to make advocacy for rights for women and girls stronger or make a difference in spaces where government funding is not going to be playing a role. And anyone can start.
Okay, I'll start.
I can start. Okay,
you want to start? Go ahead, Ella.
No. It's okay.
Okay. I'll say that doing advocacy, changing laws is, as you said, goes very slowly. But when you do it, it's for hundreds and thousands of women all at once. I'll give a small example of how we received a call to the Alice line of a woman who was drafted on reserve on October 7, and she did her reserve duty for a long period of time, and she got pregnant during that time. And when she gave birth, she found out that she's not eligible for childbirth allowances, which in Israel is very basic. I know it's not the same in the States, but in Israel, it's something that is very basic. And we found out there was a problem with the law. The government agreed that it wasn't intentional, but it's not that easy to change legislation, even if everyone agrees. It has to be high on the priority list. So we had to advocate. We did a lot of media around it. We brought that woman to the channel, to the media channels to talk about this. We talked to MKs, and we were able to legislate that. We were able to give the allowances not only for her, but to hundreds of women who were in the same situation as her.
Okay.
And I think the importance of advocacy, especially now when it's much more difficult because of what happens in the Knesset, it has become really in the trenches in the Knesset, it's very difficult to change legislation for the good on feminist agenda, but also to push back on anti-feminist agenda. We need all the resources, all the support around great legislators, great advocacy workers, media attention. It all is very expensive, and really to able to bring the best fight that we can to this. It's just a do or die situation now in Israel. Really asking ourselves what will be out of Israel after this election. How will the rights of women will look like the future? I shared with my friends, I just gave birth to a very beautiful and sweet girl, and really asking the question, what will happen to her, and if Israel will be her future, is very difficult question, but it is unfortunately part of our presence here.
So I would add that emergency funding is critical, but resilience is built long before the emergency. When philanthropy invests in policy advocacy, grassroots leadership, legal expertise, and women's participation in decision-making, it is strengthening the systems that will determine how society responds when the next crisis comes. These are long-term investments. They may not produce immediate headlines, but they shape the quality of public policy for years to come.
I want to add only something, because I agree with you, Etal and Ella. I think this is for emergency is very important in a crisis time, but also it's good that we are talking about policy change. It takes time, but at least we will make sure that we will not doing the same mistake again and again. We will solve the problem, and we will end it. We did it also with the Bedouin women with the shelters. It is also the policy change. We are in policy. We are bringing the voices of the women, their stories. We are in the policy change as a bridge. It's true. It's very slowly, but at least we will know that it will be end of all the problem. Specific problem.
But to reach those women, to have them like the capacity building they need in order to make their voices heard, it takes a lot of investment and a lot of work, and for all women to be heard, for all groups of women to be heard, takes a lot of investment in the that will build for emergency.
Yeah. I think in the US we have a phrase called playing the long game. I don't know if you have something similar in Israel, but it's like looking at that bigger long-term win and being patient with the little day-to-day that happens. So I'm going to transition us now to some questions from our audience. The first question that we have is, what is giving you hope right now?
I think the conversation around the elections, this really gives us an opportunity to picture a different future for us. How even for organizations like ours, how the Knesset will look like, how feminist advocacy will look like, how hopefully there will not be another emergency, but how everyone will be ready for another emergency, something that we all advocate strongly about. So I think this is what really gives me hope. Talking to party executives and people who are running for elections and talking to them about progress, not only undoing what happened in this Knesset, but also progress about parental leave, for example, and really important things that are outside of emergency context, but are still important.
For me, that give me hope is two things: the people and the election. Because after October 7, we felt a lot of pain, okay? But also we saw that the people work together. It's not only the civil society. The state wasn't there to help the people. But the situation, the picture that we saw in October 7, how the civil society, the sector, business sector, the people, the donors, many people, all the people work together, men and women. And that's, for me, this is the hope. We did it in October 7. We helped, we were there, and we can do it, and we have opportunity. The election, and I'm sure that with the women here and the partnership with the people outside of Israel, the philanthropy, and the civil society, we will bring a different reality for all the people here.
So what gives me hope is the leadership I see every day. Across Israeli society, Jewish and Arab, I meet women and men who refuse to accept that polarization is inevitable. They continue building partnerships, listening across differences. They imagine a better future, even during incredible difficult times, and they understand what's need to be changed in order to achieve it. They may not yet be the loudest voices in the public discourse, but they are building the foundations of a different kind of leadership. And history teaches us that lasting change usually begins exactly this way.
Beautiful. Our last audience question, we'll do quickly as we're getting to time. Is there something that the Jewish community in the United States doesn't understand that you wish we did?
That's a tough question.
I can start. I think that one misconception I encounter quite often is that people feel they have to choose sides, that you are either pro-Israel or pro-Palestine. The reality on the ground is much more complex. The vast majority of people simply want to live in safety, dignity, and hope. From our perspective, these goals are not in competition. Policies that promote equality, inclusion, and political horizon ultimately make both Israelis and Palestinians safer. I think that embracing complexity is not a weakness. It's actually the starting point of finding a lasting solution that will eventually help all of us, people inside and outside of Israel that are suffering from the conflict.
Thank you.
I will draw on Elah's words and say that when I visited the States, then I heard a lot of conversations around how to raise criticism about policies or things that are that happen in Israel at the moment, but also not be too much, like to criticize too much and to be on the offense of what happens, what is happening. And I just want to voice that we sometimes feel the same, because as a civil society, it's our mission, it's our prerogative to criticize what's happening in the government. And I think this what builds a better Israel. I think this is a patriotic act, what we are all doing. And to raise criticism, so policies will be changed for the better. So I just want to say that how important it is to voice criticism, but also support our work to do that, to make policies better.
During my meetings and tours about in the US, many of them don't know a lot about the women representative and data and situation in Israel. They think and believe, they thought all the time that we are in democracy, strong state, so it's like women rights is very important, and Israel is very leading in this in the Middle East. But when they found out that we have only, for example, from the Arab community, only 2% for women in the local municipality, they're shocked. What are talking about? The other issue is that they are used to hear about Jewish and Arab, Muslim and Jewish only around conflict. Yeah. But when I represent myself as a Hanan, I'm working with Itach Maaki, we are Jewish, Arab and Jewish, and we are working together. And it's very interesting for them how you are doing that, from where it's come. So it is the same thing. And when I participate in track 1.5 or track 2, it's an informal negotiation as a part on Israeli delegation. What they don't know about that there is Arab who are citizen and they are Israeli.
Yeah. Thank you. We could continue this conversation so much longer, but I want to thank each of you not only for joining us today, but for your leadership, your willingness to share your perspectives and your expertise, and especially I think what is giving you all hope right now. Before we conclude, I'd love to invite my colleague Udi Eitan. He is the Israel Engagement Director at the Jewish Federation of Greater Washington to offer a few closing reflections. Welcome, Udi.
Thanks. Thanks, Jana. So as you mentioned, I'm Udi. I serve as a Director for Integrated Israel Strategy here at the Federation. And I'll note that before moving here, I spent years as an attorney at the High Court of Justice Department in Israel, in the State Attorney's Office. And so I appeared in the Supreme Court opposite Itach Maaki and the Israel Women's Network several times, representing the different government ministries. And it was always important to me to emphasize to the justices that although we were on opposite sides of the courtroom, we all shared the deep concern and commitment to the issue before us, even when we understood the problem and the solution very differently. And so fortunately, today I don't have to argue the other side. And I can simply express how deeply impressed I am by the courage and persistence and the extraordinary work of Tal, Ela, Hanan, and their organizations. And this actually connects directly to our local Israel engagement work here at Federation, in which we work every day to create personal connections between our community and Israelis, to deepen knowledge and understanding of Israel, and to bring more people into meaningful relationship with it. I'll note that the work is very concrete. Just last week, for example, a volunteer mission, we helped lead a return from Israel. Right now, we have Israeli teens that are engaging with Jewish American teens in local camps as part of programs we support. Soon we'll begin recruitment for young adult cohort in partnership with the Israel Policy Forum and EDC JCC, alongside other efforts. And I think that at a time when the climate around Israel can be so difficult, our goal is that people in our community, when they think about Israel, they will not think just about the newspaper headlines that they saw that morning, or about a politician whose views feel very far from their own, to say the least. We actually want them to think about the remarkable Israelis living in Israel, about the important work taking place across Israel society every day. And we want them to picture Tal and Ella and Hanan and to connect with them, to support their work, and to share, and also to share with them about what they're experiencing here in Greater Washington. So I invite all of you to follow this work, to take part in it, and to support it. Please feel free to reach out to me directly. I'll share my email in the chat. And thanks for inviting me. And obviously, thank you for everything that you do. Thanks.
Thank you, Udi, and thank you again, Tal and Ella and Hanan. One of the things that I'm taking away from today's conversation is that this policy work isn't abstract. It is daily lives, it is access, it's opportunity, and most importantly, it influences the type of society that will emerge in Israel after this moment of profound challenge. And so we're so grateful again for the work of your organization and for your personal leadership in staying steadfast in that work throughout everything. And as Udi mentioned, if you are local to our DC area, there's many more opportunities to engage with Israel and Israelis as the year goes on. Please don't hesitate to reach out. Likewise with the Fund for Women and Girls. Thank you so much to everyone who joined us today and to the Foundation's Fund for Women and Girls for making this conversation possible. We hope you'll stay engaged with the work. We'll share a recording and this will be on our website as well as additional resources for how you can learn more about Itach Maaki and Israel Women Network work after this conversation. Thank you all so much and have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.